Hello. बंदे आ गए हैं जाओ. Hey Kishle, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Tanul.
I am taking people in and we are having people coming up in. So we'll wait for next again 15-10 minutes to start up today's session.
Sure. Yeah.
Hi, Tanul.
Hi Parki, I'm so sorry. I'll keep you on mute.
No problem.
Thank you for joining in. We'll take next 5 minutes to start our today's session. Hello, everyone. We'll take another 2 minutes or 3 minutes to start our today's session. Thank you so much for joining. We are taking around next 2 to 3 minutes to start our today's session. We'll start at 5:05. Thank you so much, guys, for joining our today's session. We'll take next 2 to 3 minutes to start our today's session. All right, I'm admitting people and We'll start next in 2 to 3 minutes. All right, I think, guys, we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's power packed webinar that is on career growth in the age of AI, which is a live coaching and insights. I am Tanul Sharma and I'm your host for today's evening. A big thank you to everyone who has registered. We hit a full capacity, though we cannot accommodate everyone here. But it's amazing to see you how many of you are committed to, invest in your career. So today we'll be talking about real strategies on navigating career switches, cracking interviews, AI roles in future, then building your brand. And later on, we'll have some good, I would say, live question and answers. We have our guest speaker here today, Kishle. Please welcome Kishle. He brings over 15 years of expertise in leading high impact global teams across GTM functions and has played a pivotal role in growth of renowned organizations like Cisco, NetApp, and currently he's in Netscope. So he is working as a director in escalation. He also has his own CGA mantra, that's clarity, grit, and action. So before we start our fireside chat, Kishle, could you just tell something about you to everybody out here?
Sure. All right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Tanul. And thanks for a very warm welcome, right? Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're connecting. And welcome to this, amazing session, right? With Tanul and me. So as Tanul said, I have close to 15 years of experience in the IT industry, have led several global teams in the past with some of the most prominent organizations, high growth functions, and have delivered some of the most impactful outcomes for the organizations, right? So my expertise is basically on the post-sales GTM functions, which is customer support, customer success, professional services, and etc. Right? And In my latest role, I am serving as the director of post GTM escalations in Netscope, wherein I'm leading a global team across a couple of continents. And I am here to share some of the insights on how do you navigate the ambiguity in the AI era, right? Very, very important, right? How do we navigate this ambiguity? How do we sustain our, jobs? How do we grow in this era? Also along with that, I would be really interested in talking about, how do you grow in your current roles in this era, right? Very important. And of course, as we have spoken in the past, how do you form your strategies to have your job switches, right? Some of you might be looking at switching your roles, doing an upskilling and whatnot, right? So these are some of the key takeaways that I would say you will have from this session. You're free to stop me at any point of time. You can ask questions. We will be happy to take your questions, right? I want this session to be very interactive because the more interactive it is, I would be having good amount of feedback on how do we pace this session, right? So let me know at any point of time if you have any questions. Yeah, back to you, Tanil.
Thank you so much for telling about you, Kishle, and of course the strategies we're going to discuss about it. So once again, thank you so much, guys, for joining our today's session. We are going to take this session ahead in fire chat session. Now, I'll ask some questions which I already received from some of you guys on the career and transitions, which Kishle is going to answer to us. And later on, we'll have live question and answers. You can also unmute yourself one by one, but I do not want that ambiguity to work. So I would also request you to write down your questions on the chat window and we'll take those questions. And later on, once we'll wrap up our today's session, we'll send you some resources on your email address today. So, all right, Kishle, we'll start with our fire chat session. Number one question that I had received from people was, could you suggest some strategies, some amazing strategies to people out here wherein, they are navigating career switches since you have been helping people on that. So can you suggest some amazing strategies that people can actually look up when they navigate career switches?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, right? So what I would look at this question at is from the perspective of where are you right now, right? In your career growth, in terms of your current role. Uh, if I were to form a strategy to switch a career, I would probably be talking in terms of a strategy called a CGA, which I generally have followed in the past and I've received good amount of results, right? So the strategy is called as uh, clarity, grit, and actions, right? So let me elaborate a little bit about how do you actually implement this on the ground, right? So first and foremost, if you're looking for a career transition, look out for what's your target? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to move from here on, right? What are your transferable skills from your current role to your next role? So let's say you're planning from moving from a customer support executive to, let's say, being a product manager, or let's say you're planning to move from a professional services implementation engineer to a customer success engineer. I just want you to map down the your target role. That is very, very important, right? And when you map down your target role, you have done like 50% of your job, right? What do you need from that role? Why are you actually planning for it, right? The next step is the grit and the actions part, right? And these are the actual implementation part of uh, your planning and the movement, right? So when I talk about grit, now these are the times when you go deep into the trenches, do your own research on your target job role, right? Start your networking so that, you are well aware of what are the industry trends, right? And create a 60 to 90 days of upskilling plan. And you can by the way use any of your AI tools to leverage all of these knowledge in the 60 to 90-day format. Now when you do this, make sure you are religious in your approach towards your upskilling part. uh, Also, when you have industry mentors, make sure you have someone who holds you accountable. Very, very important, right? Who holds you accountable for the future roles. uh, when you are able to implement two-thirds of your upskilling plan, make sure now you start planning on some of the real-time work that you can show off, right, to your future leaders. So it's very important to first look within. If you are already working in an organization, reach out to some of the people in the new work in the new domain, so that you can actually network, see what does their day-to-day look like. Very important. And what value can you add, right? Start working with them to understand, what are your two most important workflows that you can implement, right? In order to showcase as your live work, right? If you're not in an organization, make sure you do some sort of freelancing or build some sort of portfolio. Very, very important, right? Now, the third step is the actions. Now you have done all of these things. You have done your upskilling. Actions are now's the time when you start, rebuilding your brand, rebuilding your resume, rebuilding your LinkedIn profile. Reach out to people in the industry, right? And make sure that you are available to showcase some of your freelancing work or some of the work that you have done in the target domain, right? Now, if you're able to implement all these three stages, right, a job search might not seem as tough as it is, right? So that's my mantra. We can go deep into each of these sections, but that is a pretty high level of what I have done in the past, what some of my mentees have done in the past, and they have achieved some of the most impactful results from this kind of framework.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Kishle. My next question that I got recently was that you have probably, seen hundred of resumes because you obviously take interviews for your internal team. So what makes one stand out? Like any strategy or approach that you can suggest to people out here to
Mhm.
modify resumes and profiles on LinkedIn? So which can be actually help for them where they can just start applying and they get the calls.
Sure, absolutely. So, so how many of you know uh, what percentage of the resumes are rejected by the ATS system? Any wild guesses? 70%, 60%, 65%?
Maybe I can see in the chat, yeah. 70%. 60%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65%. 65
Any guesses?
80%, 90%, 70%.
70%. That's great. 90%. Okay. So it's somewhere around 80 to 85%. So that is the amount of rejections that happens to the ATS system, right? And any wild guesses on, let's say ATS passes your resume, how much time does a recruiter spend on your resume? Any wild guesses in seconds? Great. Yeah, we have. That's great. Yeah, yeah. So the recruiter spends an average of 7.4 seconds on your resume. So that is the amount of time you have to make an impact on the recruiter, on the hiring manager, on the new role, right? Now, when it comes to what are the strategies that you could implement to ensure that your resume is just stands out and showcases your current work, right? Uh, Number one is to make sure that you have the right format. You have an ATS compliant format, right? Uh, you do not have a lot of tables. Make sure that your formatting and stuffs are good, right? The second most important thing, and I would say this is the most important thing, is to list down your outcomes rather than your responsibilities, right? Now, when I say outcomes, um, a lot of people do a very common mistake, which is I have handled a team of 5 people, I have done XYZ. While the hiring manager would be interested to know this, it will not impress or it will not showcase what are your tangible results that you have achieved in the past, right? So make sure you are aware of what results you have achieved in the past. Like I have implemented XYZ project to achieve 5% improvement in customer retention. That is one statement which tells a lot about your tangible outcomes in your past role. This is a very, very important step, right? Third is make your resume concise, and it should be the summary should not be so for every 10 to 12 years of experience, make sure you have one page, which means that for each role you just have 4 to 5 sentences to make an impact. You need not put a lot of stuffs there so that it confuses the hiring manager and confuses the recruiter, right? And apart from that, as I've always said, feel free to include all of your past work, all of your freelancing work, all of the work that showcases who you are is very, very important, even if it's beyond your domain. If you're doing something in, let's say you have done a personal project using AI and you've achieved some sort of results, showcase that in your resume. That just talks a lot about your own personality and what value add will you be doing, in your new role. Yeah. So yeah, that's a high level of how I would achieve this. But I would be happy to, take your specific questions on this.
Yeah, yeah. So I got one question from Alauddin. Maybe we'll take it after the chat session is done. Alauddin, I've noted your question and we'll take it later.
Mhm.
Okay, so the third question, Kishre, we received was any interview preparation method that you feel can be a game changer for the people out here? Like any tip that you can tell people they can prepare on, which can actually help them to go to the next level.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, uh, there are a bunch of stuffs, um, you know, uh, that you can look into, right? But again, I would say you should always fall back to a specific strategy, right? And it should be consistent across all of your actions. So when I say specific strategy, I will again go back to my CGA strategy, right? Which is clarity, grit, and action, right? So when I talk about some of your interview strategies, the first and foremost thing is when you have listed your tangible outcomes in your resume, uh, make sure you are able to define how did you reach those outcomes. Very, very important, right? And these are called as the problem, the action, and the result framework, right? Wherein you saw a problem in your company, you took XYZ action, and what was the result, right? What was the tangible outcomes of whatever you implemented in your organization. This just shows that you are someone who goes deep into the trenches, solves the problem, and you are biased towards, an outcome. Very, very important, right? Uh, the second most important part about an interview is to be aware of your target role, right? So make sure you are pretty well aware of your target role. What does the recruiter or the hiring manager want to achieve through that role, right? When I say aware, there is a certain amount of research that you should be doing about your target role. You should be looking at the keywords. You should be looking at the outcomes that is expected from that role, and make sure you align yourself with those outcomes, right? So uh, this is not one size fits all kind of situation, right? And same goes with resumes as well. So not one resume fits all job roles,
Yeah.
and not all job preparation strategy fits, all job roles. It is very important to customize the way you approach your interviews to the outcomes that is needed in the job roles. And the most easiest way that I've seen is um, look at the job description deeply, understand
Understand
what
what?
what they want to achieve out of this role. Look into some of the problems that the firm is currently solving or wants to solve this through this role, right? Have one or two suggestions for that. It's very, very important. If you have any past work which has solved those problems, please showcase that. Like, for example, if there is a company who wants to, let's say, optimize their customer support, for example, right? They want to build a chatbot and they want to optimize their cost, they want to optimize their time to respond. If you have done this in the past, make sure you emphasize on this and you show them how did you achieve this tangible result. Very, very important, right? Um, the third most important thing that I would like to talk about is your own, you know, uh, interpersonal skills, your critical thinking, your ownership skills that you could showcase is very, very important, right? How have you owned things in the past, right? How did you manage ambiguity in the past? Uh, I mean, and a hiring manager keeps asking about, tell me a situation wherein, it was tough for you to handle. How did you navigate that? Did you disagree with someone? How did you achieve an end goal? So always have 2 to 3 stories from your past experience, which aligns with the future role. And you could say that, I have done XYZ to achieve something, right? Ownership is very, very important, right? Um, the fourth most important thing, which I personally see in candidates, is how do you look at the macro than just solving problems one off, right? For example, there is a teething problem that the company has, and there are candidates who could look at solving it one off versus candidates who could look at the problem at a macro level, right? So again, I'll take an example from a very common example in the day-to-day operations of an IT firm. Let's say if the firm is releasing some software, let's say monthly, and if there are repeated bugs at the end of every month, there are software engineers who could look at the problem one off, or there are software engineers who could dig deep into it, look at the root, and understand how do we fix this issue fundamentally, right? So this is also a very, very important trait that the hiring managers look at you, right? And last but not the least, right? The most important aspect is your storytelling techniques. The more effectively you tell your story, the more influence you have over stakeholders, gives the confidence to the hiring managers that you would be the right fit to handle any situation, any ambiguity, any business critical stuff in the upcoming company, right? So own your storytelling skills. That is one of the most important aspects that is going to evolve as AI comes in. As AI comes in, the gap between a technical, implementer versus someone who knows how to communicate to the business and connect the tech into business is really widening, right? And if you're someone who could effectively tell your stories, you could be a good product manager, you could be a good customer success manager, you could be a good customer support manager, you could be anyone in a leadership role who could solve critical problems for the organization. And when I say if you follow some of these points, you could be domain agnostic, meaning thereby you could make a career move from any domain to any domain. And I've seen my mentees doing it in the past,
All
right?
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Kishle. I have another question, which is how can these guys transition into CS, that
Mhm.
is AI driven roles, and also how relevant they can be at the age of AI? Like
Mhm.
how consistent they can be towards the transition of CS with
Mhm.
AI driven roles, because these days there's so much of AI coming in. There are a lot of jobs going off from the market. So just wanted to know from you that what's the best transition technique or strategy they can opt for going into AI driven roles.
Sure. Okay. Um, let me take that statement, fundamentally and tell you something, right? Um, AI is not going to take your jobs, right? This is one of the um, most common concerns that I've heard from people across different domains, right? In our industry, and be it any vertical. It may be any business vertical. It may be any business functions. I've heard this concern, right? Now, AI is an enabler versus something that you're fighting against, right? And I'll elaborate into that. If you're someone who, let's say, wants going now going back to the question, right? If you're someone who wants to transition into a customer success role in the age of AI, that means um, how are you moving from a more reactive kind of business function to a more proactive kind of business function using AI tools, right? So the traditional customer success roles used to be more reactive, more towards issues, driving very fixed metrics, right? Which with the same retention, upselling and engagement metrics versus the modern customer success managers who are more data driven, who can connect the signals from the data. So you have all the data that the customer has, you can connect the signals, you can map that proactively to the customer's business outcome, and you can ensure that you have more meaningful conversations to your customers, right? So in the age of AI, I would say first and foremost, it is very important to understand that the more you enable yourself or the more you learn how to comfortably use the AI tools or use AI to your disposal, the more easier it will be for you to survive or grow in the industry. So make it an enabler, right? You could 2 to 5x your productivity if you use AI tools in the most optimum way, right? So that is something uh, which should be used to our advantage, right? Now, if you're moving from any business function to a customer success role, I would suggest to go back to the same fundamentals, right? Uh, you gather your requirements, you have absolute clarity as to why do you want to become a customer success executive? What business problems are you going to solve? What are you passionate about? What are your target customers, right? That you want to work along with? And how do you use your AI tools, right, to map your transition? For example, you could be someone in the organization who could show that I am someone who could make a more meaningful QBRs for the customer and automate it. I am someone who could use data and make more meaningful conversations across upsells rather than it just being a same old metric-driven conversation, right? So the more you use AI tools towards your transition planning, the easier it will be for you to move into the new role, right? Of course, network with people who are in this domain. Make sure you do some sort of freelancing side hustle if you're not able to get doing some of the business functions in your current organization. You make sure that you have some sort of portfolio to show in your kitty, right? And last but not the least, right, make sure that indeed, if you get a chance to step into the role, you look at the macro levels of what is changing. So the biggest advantage of this era is the advantage of learning fast, right? And pivoting fast. So even if you land into a domain, learn fast, pivot fast, rather than just sticking into a certain framework, which would absolutely go obsolete, let's say in the next 2 to 3 years, right? So the mantra is plan, move, learn, plan, move, learn, and carry forward.
All right, Kishle, thank you so much. Before we, start with our live question and answers round, just last question, because of course you've managed team globally.
Mhm.
So what soft skills or traits that you feel that can separate great candidates? Because I've been seeing there are a lot of people who are giving more than 100 interviews and they're not getting shortlisted.
Right.
And there are people who have just given like maybe two or three interviews. They are just, they get the resume shortlisted, they get the offer letter.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, Tanul. So, um, in my past roles, I've seen people across 5 different continents, right? And I'm leading teams across 2 different continents right now, across Asia Pacific and Europe. And there are some of the common traits that I can see in people who are excelling in their interviews, right? And who stand out in this era, right? One is, of course, the storytelling technique, right? Like, how do you tie your, measurable outcomes in the past to a relevant, story for the current job role? So make sure you do your own research and make sure you are someone who knows about what you're signing up for. Very, very important, right? Second is something which I think we again discussed in the past is make sure you have at least 3 stories which are an example of a ambiguous situation. How did you solve that? And what results you achieved? Do you have experience in working with global teams? Can you work cross-functionally effectively, right? And are you good at handling ambiguity with calm, right? Are you someone who could see the macro, right? And all of these tie into one single trait that I've seen with successful candidates is if they can showcase their ownership skills, right? It's something that is non-negotiable, right? If you had the right ownership skills, if you have the right storytelling techniques, if you have the right transferable skills from your past job to the current job, I think there isn't anything that should stop you, right? So these are some of the common traits, and some of the buffers or some of the additional traits that I've seen in the candidates who have excelled is their curiosity to learn, right? And look beyond the current job function, right? Some of the questions that you ask to your recruiter and your hiring managers are also very, very important. For example, um, I can ask, tell me one business problem that your team is currently solving, and you have seen fair amount of challenges in that. That just tells you what is that one teething problem that the hiring manager is solving, and it's tough for that company, right? You could come up with some potential ideas. It just shows your curiosity beyond the role, and it will just give you an edge, right? So yeah, these are some of the traits. I can again go deep into it, but yeah, that's on a high level.
All right, Kishle, thank you so much. Before we get into this live question and answers, also adding to Kishle's point, we have been seeing in a lot of interviews, people say, one of the best trait I can suggest everybody over here who is preparing for the interview is be inclined towards the question asked by the interviewer. Because, you know what happens? I can give you one example. If any interview is asking a question like, what was the maximum revenue size that you've handled in your accounts? Instead of giving you the numbers, instead of you guys giving the numbers to the interviewer or anything else apart from those numbers, you start speaking out that, my account was this, I have supported churn, I have handled adoption. That does not takes you towards the inclination of the question asked. So make sure you're very concise towards what you're saying and also very apt on the point, because if you're giving interviews outside India specifically, they're very apt, they're very, very specific to their questions. If they ask you some question which is related to the points, or it can be a question related to your profile, you have to make sure you are on that particular point. The answer should be on that point. All right, so before we start off, we have some questions here. There's one question from Alauddin which says, how do we prepare ATS friendly resumes? Do we have any best service in the market? Kishle, if you want to answer, you can. I do can suggest some best service in the market, which is JobScan.
Mhm.
You can search it online. It's free of cost. You can create your ATS friendly resumes out there, Alauddin, and it's also one of those, I would say, website which can help you to give you a lot of examples related to different profiles as well. Another one could be my perfect resume, because my perfect resume takes some points for you to add on. But yeah, these two are something that I can suggest on. Kishle, over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Aladdin, right? So ATS friendly resume, make sure you do not have unnecessary formatting in your resume. Very, very important. Make sure you have the right keywords with your job function that you're applying for, right? And as I said, you should customize your resume according to the job function that you're applying for. Very, very important, right? Your resume should be short and concise. As I said, every 10 to 12 years, it should be one pager in your resume. And you have some of the free tools, which if you make all of these changes, it will give your ATS readiness checks, right? So if those checks go beyond 80 to 85%, I think you're good. But if the number is less than that, I think there are some red flags that you still have to work on, right? But these points are like absolutely non-negotiable, right? What we talked about, just about keywords, about formatting, about it being concise, and your headers as well, right? The way you introduce your profile is very, very important.
All right, I have another question. Is summary and hobbies important in resume?
Um, Not really. Summary and hobbies are important if you are maybe applying as a fresher, right? But as you go along your job functions, as you have more experiences, they do not hold a lot of importance. It kind of just fills your resume. So you can cut that section if you want to.
All right, so I think I have one, Abhishek. Abhishek, you mentioned best ways to write experiences using CAR framework. Is it a question or a statement? Just wanted to know from you. You can unmute yourself and ask, because I think there are lesser questions in the chat window, and you guys, okay, it's a statement. Perfect.
Mhm.
I have another question which is from Alauddin. I have two more questions. Can I unmute myself? Okay, Alauddin, you can, because we have some 15 minutes left. Yeah. Okay. I
You're not
think
audible,
yeah,
madam.
he's not. Yeah.
You're speaking on mute.
You can. I think I've given you the option to unmute.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was unable to unmute myself. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. With myself, I carry around 15 years of experience. I have two major questions. One is when we, as it was said during the call, that we it is encouraged to ask questions to the interviewer just to showcase how curious we are in terms of the job. But will it sometime act like a negative point also, trying to be will that create any scenario in the interviewer's mind that he's trying to be more smart or something like that?
Okay, let me take that question. So yeah, Alauddin, yeah, I think let me clarify a little bit on that statement, right? So you do not need to ask questions to showcase just how interested you are, right? Or just to showcase your curiosity about the job.
Mhm.
So when asked, so you will have a section in your interview wherein the interviewer will ask you that do you have any questions, right? Now, the quality of your question, the kind of research that you have done for your target role, showcases how interested you are in the upcoming role, right? So just asking a question is a big red flag. Asking the relevant question, asking something which is pertinent to the upcoming role is very, very important, right? So ensure you have done your right research and ensure that you are asking questions which are very relevant to the job role and not just any other questions just to fill up the requirement of those questions. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And one last thing, not sure if it is a question or a request, but I have been trying to explore myself a job in the UAE or the Gulf countries, and often see that the either resumes don't get accepted or there is no turn back. And whenever we approach friends or colleagues, they say only thing which works here is referral. How far it is true, and what is the best way to crack?
Tanya, sorry, Tanul, you want to take it?
Yeah. Alauddin, it's 100% true. When you go outside India, so I'm not specifically naming any nation, but what happens is sometimes your referrals work more than your capability and expertise. I don't say that we don't have expertise and hence we are not supposed to apply outside our country. But what happens in major of the countries in the world is uh, they will only bet on you if they feel that, if somebody inside their organization has given your reference, or they feel, if this person, particularly this candidate, is suitable for the role that is open there. And one scenario I can suggest to you is uh, how to apply for countries, outside your particularly specifically like UAE, in APAC country, is you reach out to the people on LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn you have a lot of people you can see from different organizations, specifically or targeted organizations. Reach out to them, ask about the profiles which are open. If they're ready to refer you, maybe you can, ask them to refer you. Second is, if you are part of that job seeker group, we do have a lot of UAE HRs there, which provides a lot of email addresses of the HR. It is always important and good to send your direct resumes with cover letters to the HR email addresses, because what happens in this particular scenario, even if they do not have any profile open with their particular domain, they're going to forward your resume to their different HRs in the organizations. Third, I always say to everybody is, you can always directly apply on the websites of different organization if they're ready to give the sponsorship, because the it's always better to have an organization which is ready to give you sponsorship, because in that particular scenario they'll not judge you for the particular profile that you're coming from or which nation you're coming from, but they're open, they'll be open to hire you. So they'll give you equal opportunity to give the interviews. And long story short, the only strategy I say to everybody is step in for the first round of interview. The moment you give first round of interview in any organization, you have an opportunity, you have a trick or a strategy that you can go to the next round. So it's always important to have a reference, to create references to the organization that you're looking forward to go into the next level of your career. I hope, Alauddin, that answered your question. Okay, so I have another question which says my resume. Okay, I have around 11 years of experience spread across 7 different jobs. My resume is around 3 pages. Is that a problem? Also, should I elaborate what did I do in the jobs, or skipping the starting 2, 3 lines? I think having a 3 page resume is always a problem, because no HR is interested to read your whole resume. I'm so sorry to say that, but it's like if you have an experience above 10 years of experience, you should always make a resume max of 2 pages. And it's also okay to not have the earliest organization where you work on in the resumes, like full, your outcomes, your achievements that you got in the resume. Instead of that, you can just write it on the companies where you worked on. So I think that's how you can save your pages, because the more lesser page you have, the more clean your resume looks, and it's more ATS friendly, because ultimately the ATS feature is to have your clean resume. It's and with having those ATS friendly keywords. Also, should I elaborate what I did in my job, skipping the starting to the, yeah, of course, because that's what I said. You can skip out your 2, 3 organization where you started from, but it's always great to write down those names in the particular resume. Soumya, I have only 1.3 years of total customer success experience. Which skill certifications should I focus on? Do you want to take it, Kishle?
Sure.
With skill certification and software.
Okay. Okay. So I would start with skills, right? I mean, given that you just have around a year and a half years of experience, right? Um, it's very, very important right now to understand how is the customer success landscape changing, right? I mean, uh, try to understand what's your target organization look like. What skills do you need to, transition into those organizations? Um, I would suggest moving from the traditional uh, uh, reactive customer success to being a proactive customer success. Start using the AI, AI tools. Make sure you look at the customer success metrics from a holistic view, right? In all I would say at all phases of the customers, which is the acquisition, retention, expansion, and all of that, right? And when you're able to do this, you should be able to build a snapshot of yourself, which will pivot you to your new role, right? So, um, I mean, any specific certifications are something which are not mandatory for you. As long as you know your, current job, you can showcase the outcomes that you have driven, and you know your target organization, right? These are the three most important things. Skill, as I said, try to hone the AI skills, I mean, the AI tools, try to hone the evolution of the customer success, and that should be enough for you, right? Tanul, do you want to add something?
I think again, because see, customer success, as I always say to everybody, it's not a rocket science. It's like, you don't need the certificate or skill to get into customer success. It's like, once you get into customer success, then maybe you can have some add-on skill certifications to take it to the next level. But I always suggest to everybody, rather going for skill and certification of any particular certification, I suggest to everybody you should have knowledge of CRM tools like Zoho. You can obviously go for HubSpot, Salesforce, Tableau, because these are the important tools that you're going to work on day to day basis. Like every day, you're going to work on these particular tools, and every organization use these CRM. So make sure you have a knowledge of CRMs, and of course, communication skills, interpersonal skills, getting your things done. Have a good collaboration with your internal teams and outside teams, like C stakeholders. But make sure that you have knowledge about the tools that you're using, because that's the one important point I tell it to everybody, rather going for any particular certification and having any skills knowledge. I have one question from Tanya. I've given you access to unmute yourself. Maybe you can just ask question.
Yeah, hi Kishley, hi Tanul. Thank you so much for organizing this. Really appreciate the efforts that you guys have. So quickly, my question kind of, I think, kind of it is a part of it is answered, because my part was also on what upskilling can I do, because I'm in a financial CSM role and I'm looking forward to maybe switch to a SaaS based industry. So now, with respect to that, I understand the skilling part of like the CRM tools, etc. But is there anything specific, because it would be kind of a change of an industry? So on that end, is there something that is required, or do you guys suggest, or what are probably the recruiters looking for?
Okay, so every SaaS organization has their own certain level of CRM tools they're using. Some are using Salesforce, some are using HubSpot, some are using Monday.com. So it is entirely on the CRM that they are giving. So in these scenarios, when you're preparing for the interview, as what Kishle said, make sure you read out to the job description, because if they're very much specific to the requirements, they want some tool expertise, they'll write it down on the JD. They'll write it down. They need person to be very proficient in Tableau, proficient in Salesforce. Therein you can, add on those lines in the interview itself. But when you talk about specifically any skill or any industry which is using what tool, see Tanya, that is very confidential for every organizations. They don't openly tell that they're using Salesforce or Tableau. So it's up to them. And now, second question that you said, what are HRs actually looking for? To be honest, HR is only looking for the JD written matter they have written on the JD. They're not looking out anything else, because HR is the first step who will actually see your communication skills. They will actually see some pointers which they have handy, which they have been asked by the hiring managers to tick on, and they'll hire you for the next round. So make sure whatever is written in the JD, you are actually well aware about that to hit that first round of HR, because HR is not that proficient to CS or any hiring they're doing for. It's only the hiring manager who is capable enough to, accept or reject you on the capability of and the expertise that they're going to hire you for. So make sure you're aware about the JD. You get in the JD and you can talk about the JD itself. You can have knowledge from of the JD from, we have so many resources out there in Google. We have so many websites where you can prepare your interview for. So make sure whenever you have your HR round, you're well aware about the JD and you're well communicative enough that if any question comes, that you're so easy to communicate that they're able to understand. Because HR is only the first step, they're going to take you to the next round. It's only the hiring manager who's capable enough to hire
Correct.
you or maybe reject you.
Yeah, Tanya, just to add that, right? Luckily, CS is a very industry agnostic function, right? So it doesn't impact a lot if you're moving from a financial industry to any other industry as a CSM, right? Um, while it is important to understand some of the tech stacks because you need to understand product, right? How has the world moved from a on-prem deployment perspective to a SaaS? So you want to move towards a SaaS solution. It's very, very important to know how does a SaaS world work, right? Because the way you handle your customers, the way you talk about any other metrics, right? Retention, NRR, GRR, it all changes uh, from product to product. But what's important for the upcoming CSMs, right, is the way they correlate their data. So there are tools like if you talk about some of the tools, right? Gainsight has a very, very intuitive data analysis functionalities that has, right? Salesforce. So some of the CRM tools really have good techniques to understand and correlate your data. So make sure you have good handle on the data. The better you understand your customers, overall deployment, the value you're giving to them, and their business, you will be a better CSM in that job role, right? So I think you have to worry less about the specific tools and more about what value you can bring to the new role through your maybe your data analysis techniques, your data insights, and how well do you understand the landscape of CSM that's changing from a traditional one to the upcoming CSM functions.
Correct.
All right, I have another question. For CS roles, do you suggest any certifications in AI tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity? Individuals who have 10 plus years of experience, how many bullet points would you recommend to insert in resume? All right. So for CS roles, I don't specifically say for CS role, but when you are at certain level of your career, I always say, having knowledge of every tool is no lesser than anything else. I mean, like you should have knowledge of every tool. If you have a time, if you feel that something can come up to your enhancement of your skills, that is Chat GPT, Copilot, Perplexity, of course, you should go and read about it. If you think you can have hands-on training for that, I suggest to everybody you should start working and reading about these tools because somewhere or the other AI is our future. So if you have some knowledge about it, of course it's not replacing your jobs, but if you have knowledge about these AI tools, it will be always good for your future roles. And talking about individuals who have 10 plus years of experience, how many bullet points would you recommend? Again, it depends on the resume size that you have. I don't suggest you should have lot many bullet points. Of course, Kishle is better to answer on that now. But I suggest always write down, do not write your responsibilities in resumes. Make sure you write about your achievements and the outcomes you had and must be in the outcome should be always in the numbers, like how much of churn you saved in the organization and how much of revenue you generated from so many accounts and everything like that. So make sure whatever you're writing is of course in bullet points, but to the next level, Kishle, if you can answer that, how many bullet points are something you recommend to this?
Yeah, I mean, uh, the standard number of bullets I can see is 5 to 7, right? If you mention 5 to 7 outcome-based bullet points, that's very impactful to your hiring managers, right? And make sure you mention the most impactful ones in the top and then move down from there on, right? Even though you have to, if you have to mention some of your responsibilities, like let's say I handled a team of 10 people or 12 people, whatever, right? That comes in little after some of your key outcomes in the organization, right? So that way you can limit your resume to one page. As you said, you just have like you have 10 years, 10 plus years of experience. I think a page should be enough for you to showcase all of that.
All right, we have another question. What are the certifications that might help me to land a job in APAC, especially in Australia? For example, HubSpot, Salesforce. Does knowledge in Power BI project management helps? All right, so if you are, Kishri, do you want to answer? Please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. As Tanul said, right? Tools always help. It all depends on what's your target organization, which job function do you want to go into, right? And how will some of these tools enable you to move there? So there's no fixed list of tools that, okay, if you learn X amount of tools, you can land a job in X company in certain location, right? There's no guarantee of that. But what's important is you can map down all of the common tools in your business functions, right? And make sure that you have certain level of understanding in them, right? Uh, um, and make sure you map your previous experience well with some of those tools. Very, very important. So if let's say if you are using Power BI in your past role, make sure you have good handle in that, because you might be asked some questions on Power BI in terms of how did you do a data analysis and stuff, right? So it's there are no standard number of tools that you need to learn, but it's very important to have good hold of whatever you have used. Very important, right? The incoming hiring manager does not expect you to know about tools which are specific to their organization. That's not the expectation. The expectation is how well do you handle and about the existing tools you have used and how effectively you have used them. As I said, right? Outcome based used. So if you can say that I used X tool to do X function, and I had Y result, right? That is very important. Hope that answers your question.
And just to add on to Kishle, there are certain companies in Australia which also gives you visa sponsorship. You know, they're not only looking out people from Australia, they give visa sponsorship like BHP Group, Commonwealth Bank. There is this Australia Bank. So in that particular scenario, I always suggest to people is you should have knowledge about Salesforce, you should have knowledge about Power BI and project management. I will not say specifically project management, but Power BI definitely, because as these organizations who are willing to give you visa sponsorship will definitely look out how better you are in every sphere of their opening. So it's not specifically if they're hiring for any particular CS, they will also look out how better you are in different um, domains or even different functions, because that will help them out to hire you on visa sponsorship. I have another question, which is the last question of today's session. I had switched jobs a few times recently due to circumstances like layoffs and project closure, not because I was looking for better pay. How would you recommend I frame this in interviews to reflect stability and commitment? Okay, so Gishta, do you want to answer this?
So let me give you a fundamental truth, right? If there is a business restructuring or if there's a layoff due to non-performance reasons, right, due to the business, uh, it's not a blot on your own resume or your career, right? You should be upfront, honest about it, that some of the business functions in my last role, were made redundant, and hence the role was eliminated. It's absolutely okay to be honest about your past experience, because the more honest you are, it builds more trust, right? Do not try to justify the layoff with any other reason. Just be absolutely brutally honest about it. If there are questions about stability, try to showcase. So let's say you have been a part of couple of layoffs, unfortunately. Try to showcase some of your stable stints in the past and what have you achieved in those roles, right? Which were in your absolute control, rather than trying to justify the layoffs, right? Just be absolutely honest. All hiring managers in this era understands about the business decisions and how the redundancy in terms of layoffs or restructuring works. So there is no blot around it. There's no problem about it. Nobody should judge people because it is beyond our control.
All right, this is our last question of today's session. I'm so sorry, there's this time constraint. What are your views on PMP certification handling in CS role? Do you believe creating SOPs is how CS company operate? Okay, Kishle, before I give it to you, okay, so I am also a PMP certified, and it depends totally onto your organization requirements. Because when I was working in Converse AI, there was a role I was taking care of the CS department, but I was also supposed to create SOPs for my client. So it depends on how well how which organization you're working. If you're working in a startup, you'll be required to do everything. As a CS person, you'll be required to do everything. But when you are working in established organization, of course, I don't say that you'll not be required to do PMP certifications or PMP project management role and responsibilities that will cater out in the business area where you work on. But of course, it depends on role to role. Kishle, over to you if you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah. So yeah, So is it mandatory for a person to complete PMP to be a part of the CS role? No. But one of the major sections of your PMP certification is something which is called as cross-functional collaboration. How do you work well with different teams in the organization? Now, for a lot of roles in the organization, cross-functional collaboration is one of the major aspects, right? So my recommendation is if you are trying to move as a project manager or a program manager, that is probably something that you can look at because that will directly amplify your impact, right, with your certification for the next role. If you're not someone who is a direct programmer or project manager, you should probably read about how does cross-functional collaboration works. How do you work with other teams? How do you work with tougher stakeholders? Very, very important. How do you work with seniors, and how do you work with tough customers, tough internal stakeholders? So all of this is a part of PMP, so you will be using this in all of your job functions. Be you if, even if you're a CSM, you are a software developer, you are a product manager, any role, right? So read about it. Doing the certification important for any other role apart from project or program management, or even project and program management, right? It's not mandatory. Certifications are meant for you to acquire knowledge and less for it to be, a mention in the resume. So if you're acquiring your knowledge, it's more than enough.
All right, thank you so much, Kishle. I have another question. Maybe Swami, you can write this question over an email. I'll be happy to answer about the MBA thing that you've written over here. And I'm sending my email address over here, and maybe I'll also add up Kishle's email address over here after the session is done. You can write your queries over this email address. So before we end up our today's session, thank you so much for joining our today's session, guys. So before we quickly just close this session, the quick recap we had today was transitioning into CS product on AI is very possible, but it also starts with the intentional learning and visibility and obviously execution. Your resume and LinkedIn are more than documents, so make sure you're using it as a marketing tools, either through LinkedIn or through Gmails, whatever you feel that you can do your marketing of your resume. Embrace AI, not fear it. So it won't replace you guys, of course, but someone using AI might replace you. So make sure you're having a knowledge about AI these days. And thank you so much, Kishle. Once again, your tips were really gold for us. And everyone here, expect a follow-up email with bonus resource and very much, keep learning, keep growing. Thank you so much for joining today's session.
Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for joining, and you can reach out to us for any queries. I'll be happy to assist offline as well.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Have a good day.